Let's talk business now with Tom Maoli. He's an entrepreneur and a real estate developer. Tom, good to have you on the show with us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, you're a man of business. You have your finger on the economic pulse in many various aspects.
I do.
Yeah, so we want to get your sense about the president now opening yet another front in the trade war, targeting Brazil and Argentina with these tariffs. Is that a good move? Is it not better to just let's focus on sorting out China first?
Well, I think everything he does is strategic. He's a very smart man, and I think that this is a shot over the bow. He wants to show China that you're not going to go behind my back and try and pull something with South America. And I think that's what he's doing here. I really think it's not.
China has long traded with South America. It's not a recent development.
It's not a recent development, but they've stepped up their game, and they're using South America to kind of go after Trump and go backdoor him. And I don't think he's going to allow it. You know, I think it's clearly his timing is strategic, and I think he knows exactly what he's doing.
But if you're going to now impose tariffs on Brazil and Argentina, it's yet another country, or two countries in this case, which make it more complicated for the U.S. to trade with. I mean, and the president does have a good relationship with the president of Brazil, Jair Bolsonaro. So why complicate matters now? Why not resolve at least one issue first?
Well, listen, he can't resolve China because China's not ready to resolve it, and they haven't come to the table. They've come to the table, but not with a plan that's acceptable to him, and he's not been able to resolve China yet. I think he will get it resolved, but he's not there yet. So he's gonna go after anybody that's doing business with China. You know, I just saw it before I came in the newsroom here that he announced that he's going to apply tariffs to France to go after France for cheese and champagne, of all things, my favorite, of course. Yeah.
Well, which begs the question, why not try and get that coalition of the willing that Larry Kudlow so famously discussed? Why not try and rally all the countries together against China? Does it not weaken the U.S.'s position economically if it's embroiled in a number of different trade battles? Is it not better to focus on the biggest fish, and that, of course, is China? Well,
clearly it is, but when you have China going behind your back, you know, listen, I have all kinds of companies that I own and manage and run, and if you give an employee a direction, and you're trying to have an employee accomplish something, and if they go behind your back, you're going to stop them, and he's going to figure out a way to stop them, and that's what he's doing.
Okay, well, we know that Beijing is even more, shall we say, upset with the president after the president did sign the bipartisan legislation condemning Beijing's conduct with regards to those Hong Kong pro-democracy protests.
Yes.
There was some sort of consideration that the president may not sign this because he'd rather get that short-term trade deal, but clearly he went the other way, upped the ante. Beijing is now threatening to retaliate. How do you expect Beijing to retaliate?
I think they're going to retaliate, but I think, listen, he couldn't accomplish what he wanted to accomplish with Beijing. He couldn't get them to do what he wanted them to do. So I think he tried from the bottom up.
We were under the impression that there was progress being made towards a phase one deal, and that this signing of this legislation potentially derailed that progress.
Well, I think there's progress every day in every negotiation. I have negotiations going on all day long today. There's progress in every negotiation.
So what are the tools left for Beijing to retaliate, though? What can Beijing do when it says it's going to retaliate against the U.S.? What's left in their arsenal?
Well,
considering when it comes to tariffs, there's a tremendous imbalance, so they can't really slap more tariffs on U.S. goods, considering that China imports so much less in terms of U.S. goods than it exports to the U.S. So they've run out of ammunition, arguably, on that front. What's their next move?
They're weakening. They are getting weakened, but I don't think they're going to fold. And I think eventually.
What about this report that China may have an unreliable entity list, that it may start putting U.S. companies on this list and make it more difficult for U.S. companies to operate in China? A somewhat, they don't like to use the term blacklist of U.S. companies, but they're calling them unreliable entities. Reports that could be Beijing's next move. Do you foresee that?
It's possible. I think it's a threat, though. I think it's a threat. And, in these negotiations, there's what I call Mexican standoffs. They try, and if they don't get it, then they try something else. But I ultimately think this will get resolved. I think we're going to go through the holidays here. I think Q1, we're going to see a resolution with China. It has to come. It has to. China needs our goods and services, and we need theirs.
Or you can have the approach, which is sounding like the preferred approach, and that is the U.S. decoupling from China. And we are starting to see more and more moves in that direction. U.S. businesses doing less and less business with China, which does seem to be perhaps the biggest strategy for the Trump administration.
We are, and I think it's possible to some degree, but we're so entrenched. I mean, our technology's in China. You know, look at companies like Google and Amazon and companies like that. And these companies are entrenched. Apple, we're entrenched in China. You just don't unwind this in 24 hours.
Well, all right. I want to get your thoughts on what we're seeing from the markets. A bit of a dip today. Not surprising considering where the announcement that we had right before the holidays?
Yes. Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, is we have the manufacturing sector. You know, the manufacturing index was off versus what the expectations were. I think it's a false number. I think obviously it's a real number, but I think what you're seeing right now in the world and in the U.S. economy is cutting of inventories. So when companies cut inventories back, manufacturers slow down their process because they don't have to manufacture as much. I own car dealerships, retail car dealerships. I've cut my inventories in half this year.
Why? You don't think you'll get the sales?
No, the sales are up. Sales are up. I've just managed my inventory. We're living in a world of just-in-time inventory, and people manage their inventories better. Why do I want to pay inventories on $200 million worth of inventory when I could pay it on 100 and still have the same sales or more? It's $3.5 million to the bottom line without selling one more car.
All right. Well, we'll have to talk about you selling us some cars.
Yeah.
All right. Tom, of the well-managed inventories, thank you so much, Tom Maoli. Appreciate it.
Thank you.